So talks at GS, Ray Dalio. I think everybody knows Ray. Bridgewater, largest hedge fund in the world. But a lot of people probably don't know your life story. They know you maybe today, and we'll talk a little bit about the book in a few minutes, but talk to us a bit about young Ray Dalio. Growing up, what was it like? Were you one of these genius kids designing stuff in your bedroom, first to build a computer kind of thing? Was that you or not you?
No, I was a real dirtbag, basically. I was a terrible student. I was lucky in that I had, a mom who loved me. My dad was a jazz musician. I grew up in New Hyde Park, Long Island. Went to a local high school, and I caddied. And I earned $6 a bag, so I'd earn $12 a round. And, that was in the 60s, and the market was hot at the time, stock market. And so I took my caddying money and I put it in the stock market when I was 12. The first stock I bought was the only company I ever heard of that was selling for less than $5 a share. I figured I can buy more shares, and if it would go up, I'd make more money. That was my investment strategy. It was dumb, but anyway, that's what I did. It tripled, and I was hooked on the markets.
Right. Let's switch to the book for a minute. So principles. What inspired you about the book? What made you want to write it?
Well, over a period of time, I wrote down these principles. I made this incredible discovery, which I would encourage everybody to do. Whenever I would make a decision, I would write down the reasons I made that decision. And then I would share those with the people that I worked with.
And that sounds exhausting to a lot of us.
So what I did, I started it originally because every time I would make a trade, I would think, okay, why did I make that trade? Then when I would close the trade, then I would reflect on how did I do relative to that. Then I made the discovery that if I was clear enough, I could specify the rule that I could then see how it would have performed in the past.
Right.
And so that gave me perspective on the decision rule. And then I found that if I made it clear enough and through an equation, an algorithm, I would then be able to take in information and have the decision made for me. And so I made that discovery, and that was a revolutionary discovery. By being able to write down your principles, that was a big thing. So I had this to answer your question, I had this collection of principles over a period of time that was invaluable because we would define how we were with each other, and then we converted it to algorithms and all of that thing. And then this year is my year of my transition. I transitioned from what I describe as the second phase of my life to the third phase of my life. What I mean by that is I think life happens in three phases pretty much. First phase, you're dependent on others and you're learning. You're a kid. Second phase, others are dependent on you, you're working, you're trying to be successful. As you're transitioning, the goal is to help other people be successful. So I'm in a transition from that second phase where now my goal is to help other people be successful. That would be the best I can. And so I accumulated those, and that's why I wrote the book. In other words, pull it together, try to pass it along.
Okay, in the book, so there's been a lot of talk about the Bridgewater culture over the years. I don't think people really understood it. In the book, you talk a lot about radical transparency and an idea meritocracy. Walk us through that.
Well, I want an idea meritocracy, meaning the best ideas to win out. And so I want an idea meritocracy in which there is meaningful work and meaningful relationships of the goals. And I want to achieve that through radical truthfulness and radical transparency. So I think in every culture, we all have to decide how we're going to be with each other. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to express that in principles. And then, so when you make a decision, is it going to be the most powerful person wins out? One man, one vote? How are you going to be with each other? So when I think of you all dealing with each other, I think you probably want an idea meritocracy. I mean, you would want the best ideas to win out, right? And I want that. If I was going to work for some place, I would want to be able to ask my questions, make sense of things, and have that work out. So anyway, so that's the basic culture. So in order to have this meaningful work and meaningful relationships. By meaningful work, I mean, I think being on a mission together, meaningful work, do great things on a mission together. Meaningful relationships, when you have that, meaningful relationships and you're on a mission together, that's a powerful combination, right? And then there's radical truthfulness and radical transparency. Radical truthfulness means you should be able to tell me what you think. I should be able to tell you what I think.
How do you think the discussion's going?
I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking. Maybe I'm talking too much.
Nah, I think you're superb right now. Yeah, no, you're doing a good job. Yeah.
So
now, okay. So I'm up at your offices, and you're having a meeting. How does it manifest itself? Like, what is radical transparency and an idea of meritocracy? In other words, like, give us some examples. If I'm in that room, what am I experiencing?
Well,
am I being videotaped? Are we talking about it? How do you put it in place in terms of how does it get applied culturally?
I'll first describe what it is, and then I'll apply it. So, in order to have an idea of meritocracy, there are three things that you have to have. The first is that you have to be able to put your honest thoughts on the table. Everybody puts their honest thoughts on the table.
Okay.
Most people ordinarily don't do that.
Yeah. I meant what I said. You're actually doing an excellent job today. And I would have given you 100% feedback if I didn't think it was going well. But anyway,
okay, please do. So you have to put your honest thoughts on the table.
Yeah.
Second, you have to be able to understand the art of thoughtful disagreement, to have the curiosity, the understanding to listen so that there's a back and forth so that you collectively to get it into a better place than you would individually. There's an art, there's a skill set to that. So thoughtful disagreement. And the third thing is you have to have protocols to get away around your disagreements if the disagreements remain. Who makes what decisions how?
Right.
Okay. So that's what we do. So everybody speaks their mind, feels free to speak their mind. They're encouraged, they're rewarded. Yep. They're almost penalized if they don't. And then we go through our disagreements, and then we have our protocols. There's a process that I call believability-weighted decision-making. That gives you a little snapshot in the meeting. I could go a little bit more, but if you want to have an idea of meritocracy, you could do it you could do it with your family, you could do it with any group of people. It's still those three things that are required, but that's how a meeting looks like.
So now, in the idea of meritocracy, first of all, conceptually, it sounds like a hard thing to argue against. I don't know what the other side. It is. I don't know what the other side of having. I don't know what the counter-argument to having an idea of meritocracy. Maybe people could debate implementation, but it sounds like it stands on its own.
Yes, I haven't heard good arguments against it. What is the challenge for most people is the emotional challenge. There are basically two brains in our brain, sort of. There is the thoughtful, intellectual, prefrontal cortex part of our thoughtful brain. And then there is the emotional part of our brain, the ego barriers, those things that stand in the way. And they're often at odds. Emotionally, it may be challenging to do. But intellectually, people almost all want to do it because, like, if I was to say, do you really want to know what I think about this, or do you think about this position? And you're faced with a choice. Yeah. You probably do. Do you want to be able to tell me?
Intellectually, you mean?
Intellectually.
I want to know.
Intellectually. Who wouldn't want to know what others are thinking about them, and who would, or be able to express their thoughts.
Right.
But yet we don't do that. I mean, human nature is like two people go to a restaurant, one says, I love the food, the other one will not want to disagree and say, I don't like the food.
Yeah, I like all food. Yeah. So that analogy applies to everyone but me. But anyway, it's okay.
But that disagreement. So we all want it intellectually, right?
Right.
But emotionally. So it takes a practice to get past it. Right, but I don't know a good argument why you wouldn't want meritocracy.
When you hire people into the firm, young people coming out of school, easier for them because they grow into the culture? Or when you hire senior people laterally, and I don't know how often you do that, is that adjustment super difficult?
You get two types. They're almost equally likely to succeed or not succeed because of two different things. The young person coming in might be more adaptable in the sense that they think it's great, but they usually come in with a lot of arrogance.
Yeah.
You know, they come out of school, they've gone to a good school, and all that arrogance, and they need to experience something different to get that humility.
Sounds like they get it.
So they go through that adjustment process, right? Then there's, but you get from organizations that have been there, 20 years, 30 years out in the thing, that they are so sick of the bureaucracy, they're so sick of the office politics, that it's like an oasis.
Yeah.
To be able to speak totally frankly, to be yourself, to try to get at truth and get past that, so both come to like they can't tolerate the other. But it's still for both, some segment of it, it's a difficult transition. And I'd say it's extremely important in our businesses, more important than almost in any other business. Because in order to be successful in the markets, you have to be an independent thinker because the consensus is built into the price.
Yeah.
Okay? So now, I'm going to need independent thinkers around me in order to be effective. The best group is a group of independent thinkers who can work themselves through it. So if you have to encourage independent thinking, not following, and then you have to have processes of getting past that to the better results, right? It's particularly important in our businesses. Now, the way it works is if you still have the authority, you can override that, but the normal way of operating is the protocol is, wow, if you're the boss and this believability weighted group says something different, you might be wrong, and how do you deal with that? So you have to work that through. That's what it's like.
Do you frequently or infrequently override?
I've never.
In that position?
I don't think I've ever overridden. Look, the markets teach you to be humble. It's such a great.
We get that here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So, well, then you've experienced that the combination, am I missing something? The fear of being wrong makes you want to find the smartest people who disagree with you so that you can understand their thinking, because that raises your probability of being right? So when I'm having a group of people around me and that believability weighted group says something, well, first of all, I need to work that through myself. And then secondly, I want to empower them, right? In other words, what an arrogant jerk I would be if I just walk out of the room and say, poof, okay, I heard all that, and you arrogant, you people, all of you, and I'm going to overrule that? That's pretty arrogant.
Yeah. Now, it sounds like you've managed to subordinate, and I guess your team and your people. A lot of this is about, in some respects, the emotional side of, you said there's the two brains, subordinating the ego. You talked about the young people coming into the firm. Transcendental meditation played a big part in your life.
Yeah. Transcendental meditation, I recommend it to everybody. Wow. I started 1969, so I've been meditating because...
How did you come across it?
The Beatles did it,
Yeah.
They came back from India, heard about it.
After your dirtbag years, this is where in your cycle?
I was still pretty dirtbaggy then. But anyway, so I'll describe it. But what it does is it gives one an equanimity and a creativity because of the fact of how it works. So the way it works is what gets a mantra, which is a word that doesn't have a meaning. The classic mantra would be Om, for example. Okay. Let's imagine that. And when you repeat that over a period of time, when you're listening to it, it sort of crowds out your thoughts. So you go back and forth, your thoughts pop in, you go to the mantra, and then you listen to that. And then when you repeat that enough and your thoughts are there, then it disappears and you're in a subconscious state. So you sort of transcend, that's what that means. And then when you're there, you're not conscious and you're not unconscious. It's a different state. So for example, you're not conscious of, if you're fully transcendent, you're not conscious of the stuff going around you. But if you were to hear just like that noise, boom, you'd pay attention to it. So it's different than if you're sleeping. And that's taking you into the subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is where intuition and creativity come from. Creativity is not something you go work hard and muscle. It's like if you take a hot shower, great ideas come to you and you grab those great ideas and so on. So it brings you down there and it kind of gives you that equanimity. It also gives restfulness. Like I would say 20 minutes of meditation is like 3 hours of sleep, something like that in terms of restfulness. So it's very helpful.
Let me ask you a question. Do you ever yell? Was Ray Dalio a yeller, or is yelling inconsistent with thoughtful disagreement?
No, but I sometimes frown too much. Like I don't ever want to yell. I mean, now I say ever. There will be some times where I'll
You're
go
human,
and
right?
And I'll ooh, and I really don't even want to kind of do that too much because if you sort of inject too much of that in there, it's not it can be provocative. So I don't want to. I'd like it all to be calmly, that we work ourselves through it in our own particular way.
As you were going through all this, you talked a lot about the use of technology. Just want to get your thoughts on artificial intelligence, how you use it, how you think it'll impact the future of Bridgewater, how it may impact, take it wherever you want to go, how we should all be thinking about it. There's lots of debate, right? On the one hand, you have Elon Musk, you have Mark Zuckerberg on the other. Maybe they represent extreme views on a paradigm of there's risk to society in terms of artificial intelligence versus those who are much more encouraging, but just give us your thoughts. That's a big way of asking the question. Just take it where you want to go.
Okay. I will urge you to write down, so it's where the algorithms come from. And I'll circle around and I'll explain that. But I will urge you to write down your principles for whatever your decision are, and you're making those choices. Because once you're
talking to every individual now.
Every individual. You're going through, what are your criteria for making that particular type of decision? When this comes along, if you're skiing, put your weight on the downhill ski. If you're firing somebody or if you're anything, just whatever it is, if you write those down, just the writing them down is going to be fantastic, and then you can communicate, then you can agree on what your principles you have in common and what you disagree. You can refine them, because everything that happens in life happens over and over again. Same things happen over and over again. So when the next one comes along, you look at that thing and you refine your principles. It's fantastic. The principles then going to algorithms is then another fantastic transformation, because if you can put it in writing, you can put it in algorithms, pretty much. Then you have an unbelievable power, okay? You will start to make your decision-making system that works like a GPS that's operating in parallel with you, except it's got much more power than you do. It can process way more information much quicker, with greater accuracy, and with less emotional baggage, and make better decisions.
Now, this whole notion of, singularity, computers basically overtake the human brain. What's your view of that in terms of when possibility, is it definitively going to happen?
I think that the human brain is unique in ways that'll be a long time before people do, but computers are unique in ways that people aren't. So let's say we are programmed. When we're born, we have millions of years of genetic programming in there. If you started a computer and you could say it could learn just as quickly as a human and let's say just as well, they wouldn't have that. So the intuitions, the instincts, a lot of things that come with us, our ability to make connections is very different from the computer and will be for a long time into the future. And at the same time, the computer, wow, it can process so much more than I can. If I think about making a decision, what stock to buy, and I think about that criteria or who to hire or whatever that is, and I take that, and now I can apply it to thousands or more, and it could process much better than I can. So there's a great partnership between those two things. So I think it's going to be a very long time, that imagination, those connections are going to be made that way in terms of real singularity. But I think the partnership is invaluable. I think
you're already doing it, right? In essence, you're doing the partnership. Up at Bridgewater every day, right?
Yeah, that's right. And what you should do, I think the future, is you should have next to you somebody who can take your idea and principles and convert them into algorithms. And almost everybody here should, because there's a language. Because if you can do that, that one time for you making your decision and you can do it all the time, that will be scalable and create an enormous power for you and the organization. It's going to be something.
Wow. Ray Dalio, we can't thank you enough for being here, everybody. Ray Dalio, thank you.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you.